Okay, yeah, okay.
And then you've heard the history.
Tell me that.
I usually wait for him.
That's a nice way of putting it. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Flagler County Planning and Development Board meeting. It is February 14, 2023. Happy Valentine's to everyone. Roll call, please.
Michael Boyd, he's informed us that he can't make it, so he's excused. Timothy Connor, okay, not present. Jack Corbett.
Here.
Heather Hayward, she's also informed us that she's not going to make it, so she's excused. Mark Langella,
Here.
Anthony Lombardo,
Here.
and Fernandez Melendez.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Can you join us for the pledge, please?
United States of America. And
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Next on the agenda is the approval of January 9th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We have an approval. Next item, I'm sorry, quasi judicial process. The audience should refrain from clapping, booing, or shouts of disapproval or agreements to avoid potential legal ramification and possible overturning of a decision by the courts. A public hearing must be fair in three respects: form, substance, and appearance. Time limits will be observed as well. We'll have staff 10 minutes presentations, applicants 15 presentation unless extended by the board. Public comments will be held at 3 minutes per speaker, 5 minutes if speaking on behalf of a group. Applicants' rebuttal and closing staff comments, 10 minutes each. Next item on the agenda is application 3337, a future land use map. Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this application and the next one are both related to basically a single project, the Hammock Park project. And you'll see here on our maps also included within your packet, and this will repeat in both of these. So I'll go through it here, and then in the next one, I'll skip through a little faster. Future land use in the area, and that purple color denotes the mixed use, low intensity. And so you can see here orienting the map north at the top. On the east side or the right-hand side of the map, Hammock Dunes Parkway is there along with a greenway strip that runs in between the subject development and Hammock Dunes Parkway, and that greenway strip owned by the county. And then on the west side, North Ocean Shore Boulevard, A1A. To the south is Beach Walk, and to the north is, I don't remember the name of the plat, I'll get to it, but it's a residential development to the north that's there. And so then Cinnamon Grove, there we go. Zoning is RC. We have the PUD off to the east side, part of Hammock Dunes. And then on the west side, A1A again, and then you've got the stretch of residential commercial that's along the frontage. That should be the school board parcel that's across on that opposite side, I believe. And then we've got the flood zone showing up here, and this is all in X shaded, so it's outside of our special flood hazard area, not requiring purchase of flood insurance. You've got that green area that shows our flood zone AE that's off to the west. Soils map, and nothing here that denotes anything of concern. We've got an area there of Mayaca fine sand, some Pomelo fine sands, and then the National Wetlands Inventory. And you can see both from this and also from the aerial that this area had been previously developed as Hammock Commercial Park. And so this is part of that plat. The road was installed. This was right around the downturn in the economy with the Great Recession. And you had these larger commercial lots that were intended to be developed with commercial uses. Went through that process. There was actually a exchange of entitlements that you saw that I had addressed in the staff report, and probably in too much detail, but I went through where this one had effectively pushed away its residential to the Beach Haven project, and in return, from the Beach Haven project, it got its commercial entitlements. When I went back and looked at that declaration of restrictive covenants, it was specific to the area on each of those respective projects that would be devoted to those uses, and not as a true density credit or density bonus. So it's a little odd, not what I expected. I thought it was going to go through and explicitly state that there was some amount of density that came from this, because remember, this is the commercial one that gave up its residential. Instead, if you remember in the mixed-use low, and I again put this into the staff report, you start out, to my thinking, setting aside your minimum open space, your percentage of the parcel area, the project area devoted to open space. And then once you pull that out, then you have the two possible scenarios that are there, a non-residential maximization, a commercial maximization that has you devoting a greater percentage of the project area to those non-residential uses, and then lesser for the residential. Or you have the opposite situation, a greater percentage of residential area to the project, and then a smaller percentage of non-residential. To my thinking, the densities are all based on the gross acreage, your intensity of use being the measure of floor area ratio, again being based on the gross acreage, the project acreage. You can imagine what's happening here in those two scenarios. You still have that same bundle of sticks, you just have to put them into a smaller portion of the property. And to our thinking, that includes then all the things that go along with it. So if you imagine for non-residential, it would be your commercial parking lot. For your residential, it could be a play area, a tot lot. So those things being unique to those specific uses, but that's how you would spatially assign those specific uses to a parcel, to a project. You can imagine just from how I'm describing this, the mixed-use low has been hard for us over the years in applying on a parcel basis. That's why I wrote it up in 2017 that the commission at the time, the Board of County Commissioners, had a request when we had this on a specific parcel basis where it was a commercial development coming in and saying, look, I don't want to do the residential apartment. I'm not going to occupy it anyway. When you all turn your backs, I'm going to turn it into storage. So how about we just go ahead and all be real honest here, and I'm not going to do it. And so the Board of County Commissioners came back and said at the time, we've got enough residential. This is not something we need to have on a per parcel basis. We can determine it on an area-wide basis. They followed that same logic with Beach Walk. And here effectively what we're doing is we're going back and the land use, if nothing else, cleans up that declaration of covenants, that swapping of the land use, where if we didn't have that in play, I believe the board's determination from 2017 alone could give us enough of a rationale, enough of a basis of their decision to be able to say that this could develop as residential in the mixed-use low, realizing that we've got enough other suitable areas designated for commercial elsewhere within the scenic corridor. Realizing also we want commercial to be more along those intersections and not along the entire length of A1A. Because of that swapping, that declaration of covenants, Beach Haven had done its development, so the covenant was put into effect. This development had developed, but had never gone vertical with its commercial uses. The mixed-use, low-intensity amendment that you see here, from mixed-use, low-intensity to the residential, low-density, single-family, I believe is appropriate. And so that's why we're going through this piece, and then this will then also yield and fit very well with the PUD that follows. So again, this being the plat, out of this, Lot 4, the one that's down there on that bottom right, that effectively the southeast corner of the development is developed. It had gone through a special use process. It's not developed with the commercial use. It had gone through a special use approval process for a public supply well for the Hammock Dunes CDD. And so the Dune CDD has that as being one of their public supply wells. That then makes it where nothing else is going to develop there. And Tract A also has the pond, which you saw earlier on this. And so that's the only piece that shows up as a wetland. That's actually the pond that was excavated, and that sits on Tract A. So 7 acres and 6 total parcels. That amendment changed, I mentioned, from the mixed-use low to the residential low-density single-family. The mixed-use low alone allows for up to 49 units and some 60,000 square feet of non-residential commercial development. That commercial development being offices or limited retail, boutique retail. Residential low-density single-family allows up to 21 units. That's basing that 3-unit cap that we have per acre on the 7 acres. Proposed PUD will actually limit that count further down to 19 units. And I include this in the packet. You probably saw the full tables. I'm only going to show part of it here. And so this one's the overview, and the next one's the traffic, and certainly the rest of it's also important. But this shows that decrease in the 60,000 and change, 61,000 square feet of potential commercial floor area. Again, these are theoretical maximums. The 49 units potentially of your maximum residential development that could occur. And then the 49 units, the 21 units, the associated population, 2.4 persons per household. So we see this as a decrease overall in the population potential, 67 persons. So that in the mixed use low, as many as a population as high as 117 on 49 units. In the residential low density single family, 21 units with 50 people would be what we would expect. And then I limited the transportation just because it was convenient for me to do so, and I didn't hit into the commercial, but I'll show you the commercial in just a second. On just the residential trip count, and so using the 9.43 trips per day, but being a daily trip generation rate, we have 462 potential trips per day based on the 49 units, 198. So overall, this shows a decrease of 264. Remember, you're always evaluating land use at its theoretical maximum. And so you're looking at the worst case on each of those. And so, this one again being limited to 19, so it'll still be even less through the PUD, at least if we're using ITE trip generation manual as our guide. This is from the analysis that was provided in the packet. This is specific to the traffic, and so these 2 tables I pulled out because they were important. So you've got at the top the single-family detached housing assumptions, daily AM and PM peak, and so you've got in that post situation the 21 units, you've got 240 daily trips. 50% entering, 50% exiting. You've got 18 in the AM peak hour, 23 in the PM peak, and then down at the bottom is that scenario that's got the existing flume, and that's inclusive. The difference here is that's inclusive of a trip generation rate for the 61,000 square feet of commercial, and so that's why you see the peak in the daily. And legitimately, there would have to be some commercial component, if we were reading the mixed-use low several years ago, before 2017. After 2017, the board's determination that took that away really put that kind of in some question. But you can see there that if there was some claim on the part of the owner to develop the commercial, we'd be obligated to then potentially allow them to develop at its full output. And certainly, if you can imagine the situation, limited footprint, you're building vertically. And so you'd have multi-story residential development, multi-story commercial development. I'm not sure how much of that is feasible, but all of that then being subject potentially to the scenic A1A requirements as well because of it being fronting on A1A. I do have the options that I've listed in your packet. Again, this is a future land use application, so the planning board in this situation, not unlike others, and including the next application, you are recommending body to the Board of County Commissioners, so that you would provide one of three possible recommendations: approval of the application, and that's specifically for the mixed-use, low-intensity, low to medium-density, to amending to residential, low-density, single-family, with the finding that the amendment is consistent with the Flagler County Comprehensive Plan. Alternatively, you could find a recommend denial, and that denial recommendation would be following a finding that the amendment is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the third option I'm presenting to you this evening is continuance of the request, and that's assuming that either myself or the applicant has not provided some information to you that you would require for your decision. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll close, wait any questions or comments, submit my report for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Is the applicant here and would like to?
Michael, did you want your presentation now, or do you want to do it for?
No, thank
Okay.
you. Michael Schmento for the applicant. You know, the comprehensive plan amendment application is pretty simple. I think Adam did a thorough job as far as what the analysis is. You know, the proposed amendment is consistent with other elements of the comprehensive plan. We'll address any questions as it relates to the comprehensive plan that may arise from the public. But we have a small PowerPoint presentation when we get to the PUD so you can see what the project's going to look like.
Do we have any questions for staff? Anybody? The board? No. So we'll bring it to the public now, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're open to the public. Anybody would like to come up and comment? You have 3 minutes.
I didn't know whether to wait till we do the PUD or not, so just get it over with, right? My name's Dennis Clark. I'm live in the Hammock. On Hammock Park, we really liked this development. The scenic A1A Pride letter, though incorrectly stated 16 units, which should have been stated as 19. There is a statement, and I'm not sure whether it's probably on the PUD and not in the FLUM amendment, but there's a statement of 40% tree preservation except for the building footprint. And I think that is different from what is currently in the Land Development Code. I think that's up for a future amendment to the Land Development Code, but that means that you can basically put a building on top of all the trees that are in the lot. If all the trees are in the middle and you want to put the building in the middle, then you can get rid of all the trees and you don't have any responsibility to replant any trees for tree preservation. So I don't think that's, I think that should be taken out of the language. And otherwise, we are pleased with the plans. We are also glad that short-term rentals are prohibited in the development agreement and wildlife corridors are included. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? So seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Anybody have any questions or any comments?
You have anything more?
I do. I don't know if you guys,
Go ahead.
well, Adam, just want to cut through a lot of the stuff. In your analysis, you found, again, this had to do with the, I guess partly with how the board had looked at it in 2017. And I did not see anywhere in there that this was inconsistent with the comp plan. Is there any ambiguity that would say this is not consistent with the comp plan? Because I didn't see one. I just want to know, you know, the way it was worded, I just want to make sure we just is there any inconsistency with the comp plan?
No, sir, and just maybe belabor the point a bit, we went through policies related to densities in the coastal area, in our both in our future land use element and in the coastal element itself, also evacuation timing, all of that, without being too quick with it, we checked the box that, you know, because of this being overall a decrease in the intensity of the use, that it fits within that framework.
Okay, and then, I guess it would maybe in the PUD part next, but I'll just ask it if it's applied here, is concurrency with utilities and all that, is that something that we would look at in a map amendment, or wait till they come in for their PUD, which is in a minute anyway?
We are required, and so a quick takeaway there, and I'll probably still have some folks that'll come back and say that's not exactly right, but the state had come back for the most part and gutted concurrency requirements for us. However, we maintained a concurrency standard within our land development code, and our land development code calls for us to make an initial determination of concurrency at the time of future land use amendment, but then drill down as we get deeper and deeper with the ultimate determination of the availability of public service. Concurrency checkoff happens at final plat. And so both this step and the PUD, both, we have to look at all of, and that's summarized in the table that I provided, but the.
Well, in the tables, you were talking about a decrease in capacity, but we didn't talk about concurrency. It just said there was a decrease. So do we have concurrency to allow this project currently right now?
Short answer, yes, on the services, and then also realizing that there's an asterisk there dependent on the availability of not only the public water that's presently available, but also on the sanitary sewer.
So is that public water with the Hammock Dunes, or is it going to be the thing coming over the bridge?
Public water presently provided by the city of Palm Coast, that's already there, and then the sewer to follow, which is to the south and adjacent because of the Beach Walk project, and so just be a small extension here. So this project actually, I believe, will not have to wait on that broader extension effort. I think that they're going to go ahead and have that extension happen for them to service this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardo, did you have a question?
No.
Anyone else? You have a question?
Nope.
All right, so do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve application 3337.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those in opposed signify by saying nay. So the ayes have it. Motion approved. The second item, the fifth item is a quasi judicial requiring disclosure of ex parte communication. Does anybody here have any disclosures to make? All right, this is application 3338, rezoning. Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a companion application to the future land use map amendment that we just had. And again, these graphics are included here and also in the staff report, and identical to what had been previously depicted, 7.02 acres, 7 acres more or less. Rezoning to PUD does require a minimum open space and amenities to be provided. Development agreement highlights the areas of concern or importance to both the county and to the developer, provides for compatibility of adjoining parcels and neighborhood. PUD development agreements, it was drafted by staff, and you saw some commentary I put on that in the staff report that, like many things, most things in our world, that we're typically scrambling, and so we had gone through and done some edits. We had the applicant's response to TRC comments. We put some things, hopefully nothing that's a significant zinger that's there. But we effectively edited the applicant's original submittal, and then safe to say that we've handled those critical deal points as we think that mutually we can come to agreement on. But I'll disclose for the record that it may yet change. Wanted to keep this intact. We had done the public notice, but leading all the way up to the publication date last week for us, we haven't had the discussion afterwards with the applicant of, is there anything here that causes significant heartburn? We did write in, and to borrow off Mr. Clark's comment, One of the late changes I had made was a line, I believe it's in the PUD, I think you all had seen it, that said that the prohibition on vacation rentals, short-term vacation rentals. And so that I said if it was something that was going to be included in the CNRs, then we always like it when it's in belts and suspenders in the zoning as well. CNRs can be changed. That may still be some item of discussion. I don't know if the developer has any heartburn with us putting it in the PUD. We did have it in Beach Walk to the south, and so we had that prohibition explicitly stated in the PUD document. So I put it in here just as an example. If you remember also, the way the PUDs work, we have a conceptual site development plan, and then the PUD site development plan will follow that. So this one, not unlike others we've had, has had that conceptual that comes first, and then the conceptual demonstrates these site development requirements that are included in the PUD text. And so you've got these minimums and setbacks. All of these are in play, and these become our dimensional requirements that move forward as development occurs. And then you've got this conceptual PUD site development plan. We don't anticipate this changing materially, and there are requirements here that if the eventual site plan looks materially different, we'll come back to you potentially for an amendment. What you can see here in a few things I'll mention just for the record: the extension of the force main, the sanitary sewer up, and then that comes into I believe it's a lift station that's here that would then match up with Cinnamon Grove Lane that they in their system. So we've got some the utility connection that we had hoped all along would happen then is occurring here. You've got the depiction of the 19 lots, this also being a recreation tract here. The yet to come feature, there will be a walking feature around the pond, which has been something that we've been calling for in the past. And I guess with that, that's really where I'll leave it here. You have the data summary that aligns with what we saw in the data table that preceded this. And then we've got the options again with the planning board acting as the recommending body to the Board of County Commissioners, the option for approval of the rezoning from RC to PUD, finding that the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. And then I've given some conditions here. All development conditions in the PUD development agreement is approved through ordinance number, and I got 2022 there because I recycle staff reports all the time. 2023 should be the ordinance. I've got a draft ordinance there for your review along with the PUD development agreement criteria. And so the development agreement is an exhibit to the ordinance along with the conceptual site plan. B, development of the subject parcel is not to commence until approval of the future land use amendment. And so you've got that tie-in. The land use has to happen first. Then the PUD ordinance would then take effect. And then other conditions, as my item C, that you feel free that you would like to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners. So you do have that ability as well. You could also recommend changes to the specific PUD development agreement. And so I'd probably encourage you to opt for that first before you opt for a condition here as part of the rezoning. Second available option that I provided to you is denial of the application. Grounds for denial of the rezoning would be that the request is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and or the land development code. And then the third option would be continuance of the request. And that again is based on some missing information either from myself or from the applicant. Mr. Chair, again, I'll wait for any questions or comments, submit my report for the record. The applicant does have a hopefully short PowerPoint that they'll share, and we'll be here for any questions that you have that follows. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up and share that presentation with us?
Adam did remind me that it was short. So, thank you. Michael Schimento for the applicant. So this project, as Adam told you earlier, was a commercial project about 15 years ago that sat dormant. The water and utilities are in there.
I may have to advance it for you, Michael. I'm not sure if we have but I don't see it on my end.
So,
Sorry. Okay.
So again, this project is the old project sat dormant for 15 years. So The developer, Kristen Gregory, she has been in the hammock for a period of time and has present construction of homes in there. So you can probably see, if you're not already familiar with her, the quality of the project that she's putting forth on this one. So the PUD, like Adam said, came back to us Friday night. I think we're in agreement with everything, but a couple of things we can address at the end. But the key components to this PUD are a few things that we want to remind the board. The stormwater that exists there today, that'll actually be made into a sort of a passive amenity with a walking path and gazebo and/or benches so that people can use that when they're out walking their dogs or just walking. The buffer along A1A when we went there was important to them. So the buffer is 30 feet. It's natural vegetative. It won't be disturbed. If you go by the existing project to the south, that's been disturbed. But in addition to keeping it all natural, we'll also add vegetation in there over a period of time if there's any visual contact between the subdivision and the roadway. Our goal is that the project remains sort of secluded and tucked away and not seen from the outside world. So we've added that buffer. The tree issue that you heard before is a new process that the county is going forward on addressing their tree ordinance. So they proposed this tree protection plan, and we agreed we can do that. And one of the reasons that we can do that is many of the homes, if not all of them, will be on stem walls, so we don't get in this situation where you have to fill the entire lot and grade down for drainage purposes. And again, if you go out to the hammock and see Kristen's other projects, you'll see kind of the quality of what she's doing. So again, that was the old project that's been sitting around for 15 years. This is the new one. In the middle on Tract E, we have an open space kind of park for dog walking. That's really a dog park. And it's just a small little subdivision, 19 units. We have minimal lighting. We'll comply. This is the discussion about the buffer. In addition, we talked to staff, and on the back of the right-of-way there's probably an additional 8 feet. So there'll be a lush vegetation along A1A of 35 to 45 feet in spaces. Utilities is a big thing. I know the county, as you're aware, is going from this septic to sewer program, and they have been for a decade. We'll be extending the utilities from Jungle Hut up to our project, and then the city at some point, and the county will extend it all the way up to Malacompra. This is the type of product that the developer is putting forth, sort of luxury coastal cottages, as we call them. These are some of the other amenities, not amenities, examples of what she's built in the past. So you can get a sense, you can see they're on stem walls, a lot remains natural. It integrates into the natural topography of the land, try our best to keep trees. Our builder is here tonight, and he can talk to you about it. He actually goes and will tell you that in the past what they do is they go out to site and they lay out the house, and they'll actually move the layout of the house around so that they can try to keep as many trees and underlying story things as we can. This is an example of a house that they're putting forth on the project. So we just added that to show you the kind of quality that's there and how it integrates into the existing hammock community. So we'll keep it quick, as Adam said. We'll answer any questions that the community may have or you may have. I can do that now or wait till the end.
I think if anybody has a question for,
I've
Yeah,
got a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. Just the street, I think it's 50 feet wide. Has that remained the same?
Yes, yes.
It
All
hasn't
the
changed.
infrastructure will remain the same.
And I had one other question. I think we had another project here with the 5-foot side setbacks. We talked about the air conditioning units either being staggered or maybe putting it behind the house so that the fire services and whoever needs to get between the houses can do that freely.
Sure.
Has that been discussed?
Yes, on Friday when we got back to PD, that had changed from the county. If you recall from a project called Eagle Lakes where we went through that, and the county commission ultimately approved a program for that issue where AC units could be in the side yard setbacks, but they had to be staggered so that there was minimum clearance in between. We'd like to continue on with that program. We took that program that was approved by the county commission and put it in this PD, and staff came back with a little different program. So after tonight, we can continue to talk about that with staff and see what the county commission wants to do. The other thing that we found this weekend when we reviewed the changes is that somebody in the county put in there that they want us to provide fire sprinkles, sprinkle each home. NFAP 13D reviewed that, and that's a significant amount of money that we'll have to talk with staff. I don't know why. I called Ormond Beach. I talked to Palm Coast, and those aren't requirements of the fire code or the cities. So we'll address those two things as we get to the commission.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? No one? All right, I'd like to open it up to the public if anybody wants to come up and comment.
Dennis Clark again from the Hammock. I just wanted to point out that they want to save trees. We shouldn't be changing the language from what it states in the Land Development Code under Section 60103. Single-family dwelling lots, each single-family residential lot must preserve or replant at least 40% of the total pre-development caliper inches existing on the site. And that's not what it says in the development plan. For this development, it says you can exclude the building footprint. So I'm not sure if we should do that as a giveaway. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come up for comments? Come right on. No, you have to come up, man, sir. Please state your name and where you're from.
Sir,
that to
I'm
the-
sorry, you need to state your name for the record through
Yes,
the...
my name is Mario Simis. Quick question for Mr. Cimento. Did I hear that you were saying that there is city sewer?
Sir,
Because I don't
just
think there is.
direct it to us, and then he'll rebuttal. He'll answer when you're finished.
Sorry?
He'll answer when you're finished. So
Okay.
just, is
That's it. That's my question.
that it? Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to comment? All right, seeing none, would you like to?
Plan up again?
Yeah.
Thanks. You can see, you know, the subdivision to the south has at Malacompra, oh, that's not Malacompra, that's Jungle Hut Road. Right now, there's a lift station at that intersection, and we'll be extending city sewer up to our site. So our project will have city sewer. The other thing that's interesting with this one that Adam pointed out to you is on the project to the north, they have a lift station now that drains into a drain field. We'll be connecting them to city sewer also. So we'll be taking that whole subdivision off a septic tank also. So yes, we will have city water and sewer.
Thank you, Mr. Cimento.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could you address, I'll ask you, Michael, first, and then Adam. Mr. Clark's question about the omitting the building area and the tree removal. Could you address that, please?
It's probably best suited for Adam, but my understanding is that the county is reevaluating their tree protection. There's some good things in their code and some bad things in their code, and I think this is an attempt of where they're going. This is their proposed language, and we're willing to do that. I think some of the other things that have happened, and Adam can talk to you about it, is in the present code, we've had situations throughout Flagler County where someone has to plant an inordinate amount of trees, and it's just not feasible for the lifelong of the tree. So Adam can talk.
Mr. Langella, I can speak to that.
Okay.
That was inserted at my suggestion. We are writing a new tree ordinance at the moment, and we have a situation where the current code often leads to an absurd result. On the one hand, we have those concerned with clear cutting for drainage purposes, and on the other end of the spectrum, you have the individual lot owners who are left with this 40% requirement. This proposed language that's before you, based on my suggestion of the rewriting of our code, is more concerned with those individual lot owners that have to replace so many trees that their lot ends up being covered in trees, and there's no room for other things that are needed, and it is arguably a fire hazard or could lead to one. And that's what will be forthcoming when we finish writing the code. So that was the rationale behind it. It's certainly within your prerogative to recommend a rejection of that, but that was done at my suggestion.
So as you probably are aware, in Palm Coast, they pretty much, I mean, it's a standard, they clear all the trees. They have to add fill, and then they replant trees. They don't take a preservation of existing trees. They basically say you have to have a certain amount of density on the lot. Is there any density of trees that will remain in the new writing that you have?
They would have to replace 40% of the trees
But if-
outside of the
Okay,
building
so if all of the
footprint.
trees were inside of the building area, would they need to have any trees on the property?
Well, no, but by looking at the aerial photo on the screen.
You're looking at this particular lot, I'm just asking in general for the,
Generally, no, if every single tree on the lot was located within the building footprint, there'd be nothing left to preserve,
okay.
if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to consider that, I'm a proponent that trees grow. You know, that's my saying, trees grow. So the idea that if you take a tree down, that's a horrible thing, you know, no. I mean, in 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to have trees that will be growing correctly on the land because of the new topographical situation that you created. So I kind of like the idea of planting trees. I think you're better off planting a tree sometimes than trying to save a tree, especially with when you change the topography. If you remove a lot of trees, those trees that look like they're really beautiful, all of a sudden, the other trees that were stopping them from expanding their canopy now look funny because it's just a tall, skinny thing without a lot of lower limbs. Sometimes they're vulnerable to windstorms. So I don't have a problem with the concept. I just think that you would try to encompass some trees, and this particular property, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But if there was a way of maintaining some tree growth on the property, then you'd have at least the assurance there would be, you know, something to take care of CO2 and for shade and for all the different things that you want a tree. So again, on this particular one, I think it's fine because it does encompass, as you see on the map, but it's in general, because this is the first I've heard of the proposal, and
Yes.
I kind of applaud it for, like you said, there's issues with trying to protect a tree just for the reason of protecting them. But if you could look at that, that would probably be beneficial.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one point? Sure. Mr. Moylan said it right, said, you know, the situation, back to what Mr. Langella had asked, was that you know, if there were no trees, you wouldn't have a preservation requirement. However, there is a shade tree requirement that we have on lots. And so based on the parcel size, you have a certain number of shade trees.
Okay, that was my question. So what would be the requirement for this?
So it's, hopefully we get it right, one per every 3,000 square feet of lot area for the initial quarter acre, and then one per quarter acre thereafter. So that I think you work out to be, was it 3 or 4 in that initial quarter acre, and then 1 for each quarter acre of lot size thereafter. And you do get credit for existing trees. Make sure I'm very clear on that, though. There's a separate index tree list and a shade tree list. But of all things, we give you credit on the shade tree list for existing pines and palms. And I'm looking right here at what's next to Lot 10. Let me see if I can get my cursor to work. So right here, you know, we can all see those shadows. Those are pine trees. And so, and also looking at the historic aerial for this property and what we know about it, the old hammock, the oak stuff all happens kind of right about here, and this stuff all being a lot of pines that are over here. And so you can see here, these are tall, these are pines, these are not. These are probably going to be index trees over here on this part. But in the scenario I'm talking about is that you'd get credit for those pines and palms that are existing on the property for your shade tree count. So scenario there, index, and that big misnomer right now is our code is applying it. You could take every tree off your property, and then you're planting back. You're meeting that 40% planting. So a lot of folks think, oh, I've got to preserve trees. You don't. You know, you can take those back, just knowing that if you have 100 inches of index trees, you've got to come back and replant 40%, 40 inches of that, and then 2 separate requirements: shade tree. You got to have some minimum count of shade trees when you get all done.
Thank you, Adam. Is there any discussion by the board members on this?
No.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We approve application 3338.
Thank you, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. And motion is approved. Thank you. Okay, the next item is item 6, and this is also a quasi judicial requiring disclosure of ex parte communication. Does anybody here have any disclosures to make? Okay. So this is a request for an amendment to the approved special exception for 14 townhomes to amend. Adam?
This is, how many times have you heard me say this? This is a little unique. We have a situation here where this had, and I've gone through the history with this in the staff report, so I won't try to go into a bunch of detail on this, but summarizing it, and I think I can do it fairly succinctly, is that our old RC, residential limited commercial requirements, had a multifamily special exception that was built into it. And so take yourself back to 04, 05. The special exception was there. The code was amended to remove that multifamily special exception. And the owner at the time, present owner, same owner, had come in and wanted to avail themselves of the special exception that now no longer existed. It had been written out of the code. Determination was made, I believe at the staff level, that this property was vested. Property owner did nothing on their part to amend the code, but they were effectively caught up in that change, where they had worked under the assumption that that special exception was in effect, had done some initial planning for multifamily development, had moved forward towards an application, and was determined then to be vested, so that they could then avail themselves of the special exception. An application followed right around the time frame of late '06, early '07, really into '07, and the planning board at the time had approved that special exception. Nearby landowner had appealed that to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners, in the appeal hearing, had come back and had sided with the planning board, however, did not provide the appealing party sufficient time for them to state their claims on the record, which in turn then led that appellant to go to court over this. It was remanded back to the Board of County Commissioners, and in turn then was the subject of a settlement agreement that then led us to a subsequent special exception application. And so what you'll see in the history is lots of mention of special exceptions, special exceptions, special exceptions. And then the resulting final action then was a special exception by the planning board approving 14 townhome units. Each of those successive steps then, and so you had an original special exception grant by the planning board in 2007, a settlement agreement that roughly coincided with 2007, as I recall, and then a subsequent special exception in 2008. And those are important items because those are what I looked at later. In hindsight, I was here for that history, as creating effectively the case file for this. 19 some conditions that in total represented the next step for this development. And I've included those here. I've included them in your packet, kind of where we're thinking we're at with those. Maybe I've gotten a little bit ahead of myself, but the future land use here being the mixed use, low intensity, the residential, limited commercial, consistent with what the zoning and land use has been all along. And you've got this portion within the flood zone. You've got some part of it that is within the VE zone that lies to the east, basically coinciding with the coastal construction control line, and then the remainder within the zone AE, the flood zone. And your soils here being those, you do have some Palm Beach gravelly sand, which corresponds basically to the dune line. Then the Pomelo fine sand, which you see elsewhere within the county, and those are ordinarily well-drained soils, and so you see that as predominant soil types here. And then our wetlands inventory map, which showed just what we figured. There's no wetlands here, primarily because of the Pomelo fine sand that's present on the property. As I gave you in that preamble, unique, and you're probably getting tired of unique situations by now. 3.87 acres for the parcel size. And so one of those questions we came through, not unlike what we had said in 2007, why can't this just be a PUD? Why can't we make all this go away? Well, because it's not the 5-acre minimum. We couldn't make that happen. 14 townhomes were previously approved. Those were attached townhomes. That was a multifamily. Arguably, we've had others that have developed that way, and we've called those single-family attached, but at the time, we had the townhomes come out, we were saying these were, 14. That's consistent then with the multifamily special exception that had been allowed in the RC zoning previously, so we were checking the box there effectively. And the new application then coming in was 16 single-family lots. This has a little different character because at the time when we were back with the 14 townhomes, we were assuming a large mass septic tank. And so if you can imagine all of this then being condo development at the time, it was intended to have common area maintenance. It was going to have a septic tank that was going to have a drain field, effectively a collection system. And then it did have a provision in our agreement then, the settlement agreement, and I think it made it into the conditions you'll see in just a moment. I believe we had it in 2008 as part of the planning board's determination that if and when the septic tank went away, then that area that was devoted to the drain field, to the septic use, then would be used for recreation purposes. And then your final piece that we have that's in play with this, that's a little unique that we didn't have before, is that we had approached the applicant as part of this application and said, hey, we need some things from you on this go around. So we want to have that public dune walkover. We need that. You probably have been tracking some of that. The Corps of Engineers wants us to have a public dune walkover roughly every half mile if we can make it happen. And we understand this is close to the north end. We have what was it, River to Sea that's there, and basically a marine land. We think it would be an appropriate ask for us. And so along the south end, there's a 15-foot wide easement that's being proposed. And then also then, at the same time, the applicant's consent for the dune maintenance easement. And so we wanted to have both of those in play with this and had sought both of those. Question that had come up, okay, so you're putting in a public dune walkover, where's the parking for that? We have connectivity with this to the sidewalk that runs along the east side of A1A. And so what we're anticipating here is you may not drive to this, you could ride your bike. This could be for people along old A1A. This could be for people that, whatever reason, in the south end of the north part of Matanzas Shores would want to come down here and use this public dune walkover, and they could certainly do that. So that we're not intending for this to be something maybe that you drive to, but you could certainly use it as a walkover. And we're hoping that this would meet the Corps of Engineers requirements also for that public dune walkover facility. These are the charts that I mentioned. It's a 3-page in total. And these are those 19 conditions. So I misspoke there. 06 was, I knew it was back a long time ago. So October 10th, 2006, we had our planning board meeting, the first one on the special exception, the first go around. And so we had those conditions that came out of that. I think there was there 6 of those? Yeah, 6 of those. And so 6 then, and again, I'm not going to read those in there. We did have all those part of the consideration, and the planning board had determined that those were conditions appropriate for this, and then that was appealed. The 2008 settlement agreement then added to that. Let's see how many of those were. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is that? Another 6 criteria, and so they had their own 6. And then, not unlike the previous conditions that were placed within the 2006 Planning Board meeting. And then I'm really going to go into the 2008 one. So you have the project signage complying with the dimensional and location requirements of the section from regarding sign color, those items. I said will be required. Site plan will demonstrate compliance. All project lighting complying with our marine sea turtle provisions. Site plan ultimately will depict this as well. Western and northern landscape buffers shielding the parking from public view. Not presently met by the conceptual site plan, so I'm asking for it to be met. Excuse me, the Scenic A1A Pride Committee, giving an opportunity to review the final site plans, landscape plan, signage plan, provide Pride comments to the county, and then the conceptual plan at this point has been reviewed, but I believe that, safe to say, this condition contemplates additional reviews that would come at the time of the PUD site development plan submittal. And then those final three conditions that came from 2008's meeting, the connection of the sewer with the drain field area remaining as recreational open space, the funds availability that talks about burying the power lines, that hasn't happened and likely will not. And then the turning radius for fire and garbage trucks meeting the criteria. And I didn't have enough information to determine that at this point. I believe it will be met, and if as we proceed with this, we would come back with comments related to a mountable curb if there's issues with that would allow. If you imagine the fire truck having the overhang, you don't want to have a high curb or mailboxes in the way so that your truck will then be able to turn over the curb. And that's what we're hoping will be achieved here. And that ultimately may be determined at its latest point as part of our subdivision plat review related to the actual improvements based on the plans that come in then show that difference between a mountable curb and a high-backed curb. This is that conceptual plan that's submitted for record. And so this does show at its north end a proposed emergency stabilized emergency access leading out into the existing dirt driveway that serves the neighboring property. You can see that driveway at this north end is within this subject property. You can see the location of the stormwater pond, and I'll provide for the record, I didn't give it to you, but the previous plan had shown this as being the location of the drain field. And so this was the area that was to be dedicated for recreational uses. The layout here is not much dissimilar from what had been provided with the 14 townhomes. You do have the addition of the lift station here. And then the proposed driveway roughly in its same location that had been provided with the townhome plan. Difference here, and a little bit of a problem for us because our code at the time in the RC zoning back in 04-05 had specified that if you did multifamily development, your multifamily development would meet the dimensional requirements of the R3 multifamily zoning district. We don't have that same ability here with this present application. And so I'd almost say this is maybe akin to a PUD light. This does give the ability for the applicant, admittedly, to be able to make some of this their own. And so they provided some of this setback information within this. So you do have that 20 foot on the front, 10 foot on the rear, 5 feet on the side as part of the what's being depicted here on this plan. And we, at the staff level, I think safe to say that we wanted to advance this to you in this manner. Planning Board first, Board of County Commissioners second, because of the uniqueness of this. This was a special exception, so your question probably arises, well, aren't special exceptions normally meeting 9 site-specific criteria? You know, don't we usually just have a thumbs up or thumbs down on this, and aren't we the final deciding body on this? Because of this having those 19 criteria through this long history, because of this having this unique status, when the applicant approached us and said, this is what we're doing, we're opting towards the side of caution and wanted to do this dual setup. So again, you're going to, in this framework, I'd say you are reviewing this for the 9 criteria. I put the 9 criteria in your staff report, but you're really reviewing it for those 19 separate conditions that were out there that I put into those 3 pages in the table. You're really reviewing it to the demonstration with this plan that's there in front of you. You know, does it meet the 9 site-specific criteria that come up? I included this here in the presentation. I did not put it in your packet. It looks like it missed the backup. You have this. We had this waiting for you on the dais. This was the Scenic A1A Pride's review letter. And so I'll read these parts here. This has the comment on the short-term rentals being prohibited in the HOA covenants. 40-foot landscape buffer along A1A with primarily native plants is required with 80% opacity after maturity. A1A Pride would like to review the final site plans, landscape plans, signage plan before submission to the planning board. Stormwater pond area will include some picnic tables and our recreational facilities, and power lines along A1A in front of the development be buried if economically feasible. So you can see there's some integration there between these conditions that are being recommended by A1A, along with what had come out of the 2008 Planning Board action. And so have that for the record. Also have an email that was submitted, and you had this waiting on you as well from Ms. Marilyn Bagdonis. And so that was also for the record. We had not received before coming into this meeting any other correspondence. I would have provided it to you, but those are the two items that you did not have within your packet, and I'll submit those also for our record here, and then we'll continue these as part of the submittal to the Board of County Commissioners. And then this was the graphic also that was part of the packet that was in your packet, but this was an attachment to the A1A. I just wanted to include this because this has, a bit of this conceptual, shows some of the landscaping, shows its orientation to A1A, and kind of the ocean shows kind of a little different feel rather than just seeing lines on the map. So this has a bit of a three-dimensional character to it. With that, to see that there are three options, again, being a little unique has a special exception, but with this one, we're looking for a recommendation, approval with conditions that you're finding that the conditions, the special exception criteria have been met. And then I had subject to the following conditions, and then did I put those in the packet and just leave them out?
A through G?
A through G, yeah. I decided, I guess, I didn't want to put them into the PowerPoint, so I'll read them into the record. And the owner satisfying the outstanding conditions related to the 2006 Planning Board determination, 2008 settlement agreement, and the 2008 Planning Board determination as applicable. B, the project connect to central sewer as provided through the Matanzas Shores Master HOA system. C, that the owner provides the county with a 15-foot wide pedestrian easement for a future dune walkover. D, that the owner consents to the dune easement. E, the north and west perimeter buffers be augmented so as to create an opaque barrier of natural vegetation, a minimum of 6 feet in height, within 5 years of the commencement of development of the parcel. F, that the owner present the site plan to the A1A Scenic Pride Committee for their review and comment prior to site plan approval by the county. And G, other conditions as added by the Planning and Development Board as part of their recommendation following the public hearing. Second option would be a recommendation for denial, and that would be finding that the special exception criteria for some information that's lacking either in my presentation or the applicant's presentation or in their responses to your questions that would require us to come back at a subsequent meeting in order to satisfy your questions. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll close, wait any questions or comments from you. I'll also turn it over quickly to Mr. Moylan to correct anything that I've strayed on and submit my report for the record, and then await your questions and comments. I know Mr. Chimento has a presentation, but if I could turn it over to Mr. Moylan first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, I really didn't have anything to add, but certainly I'm here if questions come up. I've never seen anything quite like this with the posture that it has come before you. The applicant has vested rights on this property and could move forward. They're seeking to make an adjustment to those vested rights, and that's what's before you here. You can impose any conditions you think are appropriate based on those 9 standards in our code.
Thank you. Is the applicant ready to present?
If you would give me one moment. Okay, Michael Chimento for the applicant. I appreciate you guys going through that. You've heard time over time, as you sit on this board, how long this process can take. So this goes back to 2004 and 5, the recession hits. But really, what happened about 3 years ago, we brought this project to county staff and said, we'd like to, amend the approved plan so that we think it's better for the community, it looks better aesthetically. And so we began to talk with the county at that time. And again, back to sewer to septic or septic to sewer. The county commissioner asked of, hey, can you guys go and see if you can't get water and sewer, or sewer from the Matanzas Shores Owners Association. So that took about 2 years for us. This was before COVID. So we started working with Matanzas Shores Owners Association and the county to amend the county rules and regs and to ask them for the opportunity to remove our septic. So probably 2 years, 3 years of this, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have met the county's ask of us for this project in order to change the septic and put this thing on sewer. The other thing that we've done to provide community benefit, as Adam said, we're providing a public walkover to the beach so that people in the immediate resident area have access to the beach. That'll be landscaped, as you'll see here in just a minute. Another thing is we've granted the easements that the county has requested for us. And the third thing that we've agreed to between us, the county, and the association is to restore the dunes up there for protection from inclement weather and things like that. So those are all conditions. So this is Solitude. Again, you know where this project is. Mark, you've been around for a while. I don't know who else has been around, but this used to be a trailer park on the beach. There's 0 trees, 0 anything on the adjacent lots. It's just a cleared lot. So there's really no tree preservation to be had. This is the plan that was approved about 15, 16 years ago. As you can see, it's a townhouse product, attached wall for the number of units, and in the field up at the northwest corner, that's where the septic field was. This is what was approved too. And we went to A1A Scenic Corridor. We had a lot of comments, and I think a lot of the people said we'd prefer having the detached houses rather than these monolithic walls of townhouses and the angular that they are. So again, this is, as Adam said, this is a vested right. This can go forward today, but the owner has elected to ask you all for a modification, an amendment to the approved plan to what we have here today. We've asked for 16 single-family homes. There's a project down in Beverly Beach, I can't remember the name of what it is, Sunset Cove, I believe, where they're smaller 3-story homes and they sit on the marina. So if you can imagine what they look like there. This is the landscape plan. One of the things we did when we went to A1A Scenic Corridor is afterwards we worked directly with them, and you can see along A1A, there's a written landscape plan in what we've submitted to. That's been worked with the staff as with A1A Scenic Corridor because they seem to have a better understanding of what plants live and die and have vitality there. Also, along the southern side, you see that we provided access to the beach, and for the benefit of our community and the resident and the general community, we're landscaping that with rows of palm trees. So it'll have a promenade effect for the community too. So that is the plan in 2D, as you can see. Landscaping to the north, 80% opacity after it grows in, and certainly 80% opacity along A1A, so that when you're driving along A1A, you won't be able to see into it. I do draw to your attention, though, that as you're coming up, there's no trees. You'll see our project, and then as you pass, it'll be open again. But I assume over time, decades, that'll change. So that's the current plan that we've proposed to the county to approve. This is it in detail that shows some of the engineering. Lane widths are roundabout. It'll have to go back in technical site plan, but our engineers have assured us that that meets the requirements. So we have that. We have an emergency access out to A1A in the event something happens. One of the things that came up too that you saw is the buffer. So one of the things that we talked about with A1A is they wanted a buffer, and there was a comment of a minimum of 40 feet. Well, as you can see, lot 16 right there is up along A1A, and that corner right there, thank you, has a setback of 25 feet, but the average is well over 50, 60 feet. In the back, you can see on the north, we go to almost 100 feet, and up to the front of the project from the south side, we're in 40, 50, 70 feet. So we have a 25-foot minimum just in that area, but the average is well over 40 feet for the entire project. And again, it's our anticipation that it'll be a raised berm, it'll be heavily landscaped, and you won't be able to see in or out of the project. This is the community, the renderings. Joe Pizzula, he's a local architect, has been working with us, and this is the renderings that he's provided. This is the kind of product that we intend to put there in these 16 homes. They're 3 stories. They're over 3,000 square feet, including garages and spaces. They are 5-foot setbacks. It'll all be landscaped and maintained by the HOA. This is what Mr. Pizzula did as a rendering coming from A1A north and south. That was the original one. The new landscape plan, because it is a berm and it's 80% opacity, is probably, it will be much more dense than that. So these are just kind of to give you the flavor of the type of project that we wanted to go from. This is the plan that is in front of you. And again, we draw back to, this is what is approved today, vested rights go in, these two, or we were asking you to approve this one. Again, we provided you with concepts of what the public benefit were. Under a special exception, you can add conditions, so we're here to answer anything that you may suggest. So that's a quick presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chimento. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm going to direct it first to Adam. So, structurally, they're asking for an amendment to the special exception. We see a site plan in front of us. Does this size development require that we see this again in a site plan again? Or is this the only time this is coming in front of us, and then it's going to go, for staff stuff after that? So what is the procedure from here?
It will return, but it will return as a plat to you. I think is the quick answer I can provide. I didn't contemplate it coming back. I know that there had been a step that I'd asked for having scenic A1A review next, but maybe I'll look to see if Sean thought there's going to be any intermediate site plan step, but less than 5 acres, it would not come back to planning board. It would go through a staff level TRC review. We do anticipate that A1A will have a bite at that before or as part of that TRC process. They'll give us their comments. You will see this then as part of a preliminary plat. Realizing that preliminary plats come to a planning board, go then recommendation to Board of County Commissioners. Final plats being, they take that step only to the Board of County Commissioners, but you'll see it again at platting.
So will the plat delineate the setbacks? Will the plat delineate the landscaping requirement? Where are we seeing that? Where is all that stuff happening?
That is happening here. And that is through this approval and your approval tonight, your recommendation for approval or denial or with conditions will be forwarded then to the Board of County Commissioners, and we'll effectively set that in motion for its finality.
Can we go over the
The data table.
setbacks on here? And also, again, I know that we already had Mr. Corbett ask the question earlier again about the offsetting of the air conditioning for fire reasons, and the lift station and all that has been approved. So we don't. This is the way this is going to be built. It's not going to have a septic system. Is that is the way we're approving it because that's already done in stone, or it's going to be contingent upon their getting the septic, the sewer and all that. So how does that work?
Its location probably is, the location of the lift station is probably safe to say conceptual. I think they've put this through some rigor for a engineer's review. My understanding is the sewer line, existing force main does run along, you can see it runs along the west side of A1A. And so those lines are already in place. Effectively, it's just a new lift station.
They have a letter of acceptance for that.
That's the question. I think that we've had a initial will serve, and we'll need to have as we move forward. We'll have something that will come from the master HOA that will say yes, we've got capacity. This confirms that connection, and then we talked internally about permits that are needed for that. And I don't remember if DEP would even touch a permit with this. We know there will be a permit from DOT that will be needed because the tap's occurring within the right-of-way. And then the actual construction of the lift station will occur as part of our land development permit associated with the subdivision improvements. And so
While
things.
he's vested to build the 14 townhomes and he can do a septic in here, he's proposing the 16 homes with the sewer.
Correct.
Is that a condition then? Would be that the sewer he has the Because it seems to be, this is the way it's proposed, this is what we're seeing, I mean, this is a conceptual. So are we going to get, is there a condition, or should we have a condition on the sewer being accepted for this to be an accepted?
Yeah, I think you can be explicit with that, so that as you know, it's townhomes with the septic versus 16 single-family detached with the public sewer.
Okay. And by the way, was I on that planning board that did this originally? I remember this thing somehow. I know the property because actually, Michael, it used to also have a little motel along that whole long strip. Yeah, on that south side, and it is completely barren and has been barren for the 40-something years I've been here. But
Mr. Langella, can I interrupt real quick, and it'll address your comment? That is a condition of this approval. We are more than happy to say, when I went over in the beginning, the community benefit that we needed to show, Rob, is we're connecting to sewer, we're restoring the dune, we're providing the easement and to the beach, and we're providing the county with the beach renourishment easement. So those are conditions that we have agreed to.
okay,
Okay, so in order to answer another question that you had, I was under the impression that this has to come back to the board in a preliminary plat format, and we have to demonstrate consistency with these plans. We are more than happy, because we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money literally hard engineering this to the extent, I mean, I'll make up a number, 60%, but we're pretty accurate as to what can be done. We've designed roads, we've designed turning radiuses. So if you want a condition also that it looks like this and this, we're happy, because this has some dimensional requirements on it with your setbacks. This shows the landscape plan in the bottom right. I mean, we're that hard engineered on this thing. This is not a concept.
right. I don't think, you know, Michael, I don't think keeping that area to the north where it is by, by the rule of having to keep it that area being an public area or whatever, grassy area, there's not much else you can do with it anyway. You really couldn't change this around a lot anyway, so I don't think that's a big deal for me. I just wanted to make sure we were accepting it the way you're proposing it, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my question. I'd like to hear the public comments, but that's what I had.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Chimento? Mike, I have one quick question. On the future dune walkway, is there going to be multiple access to that, or is it just going to be straight down from the sidewalk?
From the sidewalk is in the A1A scenic corridor.
Right, that's it, that one access, and all the people from the house?
Well, the house is right. If you go back to the one plan, the green one, you'll see, you'll see in between 5 and 6.
Oh, okay.
That's our access to it also.
Right, that's what I didn't get to see that. Okay, thanks. All right, so we could take it to public comment. Anyone want to come up and comment? Please state your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Courtney Vandabunty, and I live in the neighborhood behind. I guess I just have some. Where'd he go? Oh, here. So I have some questions. I did get a lot of questions answered tonight, but some more questions would be, I guess, one, people buying these houses, will they be able to get insured? I'm asking that because, I walk there every day, and lots 6 through 11 are just pretty much in the sand. And if you look at the house directly to the north of this lot, it is dilapidated. And, the ocean comes into that house, not just during storms, but just during any high tide. If you walk there right now, you'll see there's like a line of trash from when the tide comes up. And I think, during the tropical storm, it doesn't even have to be a hurricane, but during the tropical storms last season, A1A was closed a few times because the ocean just came right up. So I guess another question is, have you considered stilts? Because the ocean is, I don't know how, this plan, attributes for the dune restoration, because you can't really stop the ocean. There are no dunes. There's no dune restoration. It would be dune creation. So I'm really curious as to how that would look. Are you considering storm walls, or I don't know. These are all just the questions going through my mind, because dune restoration is very misleading because there are no dunes. It goes, the ocean and then sand, and then that's it. So that's, I guess, my main concern. I appreciate, that there's a public walkover, but really, I just am concerned about, just the state of the neighborhood after a few hurricane seasons. I anticipate people selling or abandoning because that's what you see a lot of times with houses that are built directly into the sand with no buffer. If you look at Surfview has, footage of established dunes, but for whatever reason, that little, 3.8 acre lot just doesn't have any established dunes. And if you look at Marineland also is lacking in dunes, and they've tried for years to establish dunes. And unfortunately, I wish that it were, their efforts weren't futile, but the hurricanes come in and they just move the sand that, they spent millions of dollars putting there. The sand just goes away after, one hurricane. So those are my questions. I do realize it's a lot. But do your best to answer. One other thing is I have been communicating with the State Parks Department, and they said with its proximity to Washington Oak State Park, they're interested in purchasing it. So if your client is interested in selling it, the State Parks Department just said, have them contact them and they would make an offer.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up and comment? State your name, please, and where you're from.
I'm Carol Scott, and I've lived 23 years in Lakeside at Matanzas Shores. Your designs look very neat and tidy, but folks, I am here to tell you it is not. Have you all, may I ask, have you been to that site? Have any of you seen that physically? Well, if you had, you would note that if you're coming from the south, entry is difficult. If you're traveling from the north, just forget it. You can't get in. That is a very dangerous curve there. And last year, I was run off the road 3 times because everybody wants to be first. You would also note that the ocean, well, if you were from the beach side, you would know that the ocean has taken large bites out of the sand dunes and gobbled up a lot of shoreline in Matanzas since the last hurricane. There is no sand dune there. And as Courtney just said, if you try to rebuild the sand, or maybe you would just want a seawall, it's not going to hold because the ocean can move those tons and tons of coquina rock. Also, you realize that it was a trailer park. I think that was mentioned. It was a trailer park, so possibly there's oil seepage. And I wondered if you were aware that there's been no environmental cleanup documents available. I had a geologist check into that. So that's really a scary situation. Another lady and I met with a landscape architect, a very nice gentleman, and we tried to come up with some plants and trees and shrubs that might live in that area. Well, since I live in that area, I can tell you now that I think about some of the things that we suggested, they're not going to be sustainable. Even if you think about native specimens, they're not going to live. That is a barren land. The ocean's going to come through and hurricanes or just nor'easters take out those that vegetation. Oh gosh, that's almost my time. I just hope that you won't approve this. No one should live on that area, and those 16 homeowners would be duped regarding the viability of living on that land because their homes would flood. They could grow nothing in their yard. And I noticed a lot of concrete in your plan, this plan that was presented. The place is going to flood. And those people will always have an existential threat of a car accident on that most dangerous curve. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
My name's Ronnie Wilson, And until 2 weeks ago, I was president of the Matanzas Shores Association, but I got off for good behavior. And I do want to answer some of your questions. We have met with them, the developers, and we have signed a contract that they can join our wastewater treatment plant. And in order to even discuss it with them, we had them bring to us the plans for their berm, their sand berm, because that has been our real problem in each of the last few storms. If you want to go check, I can get you some pictures of the highway there that was covered by a foot of water, and we were locked in that way, and we were locked in north by sand. So our big concern was to get the berm built. One way to get that was to get with them and say, you build a berm, we'll let you join our association, the wastewater treatment plant. And they've done that and been very cooperative with us on providing us the plans for the berm. So yes, they are prepared to meet that one part of the challenge.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to come up and comment? State your name and where you're from.
Charles Beeman, 6525 Old A1A, across the street from where this is being planned. I got a couple of questions. I didn't hear Adam say anything about a few years ago, there was a problem with this. They wanted to build 29 condo units, and we fought it and got a judgment from the county commissioners for 5 to 6 houses at the most on this property. What happened to that? I mean, that was legal and everything, lawyers involved. Mr. Koch was the man that worked with Mr. Baer, attorney. So that was that problem, and I would like to know what that is all about and how this all came about to 14 houses, now 16 houses. And also, the construction control line. I've been a contractor, a state certified contractor for many years here in Florida and built many houses on the beach. And the construction control line, I don't know, you had a picture of it up there. The construction control line is supposed to be the control line. Everybody stays to the back side of it, to the west side. Well, in this picture, it has 6 houses up on the east side of the construction control line. I don't understand that. Has there been some easement or something given to this? And this development, it's a development, scares me. You people approve these developments. We have the Los Carlos that is 8 feet below or above sea level, and most of the houses are below that. They're in the 7 foot to 8 foot range sea level. That's not a good way to build them. We're all 10 feet above sea level. We're one resident to I have an acre and a half. A lot of the other people on our road are an acre, one residence, 3/4 of an acre with the residence. Mr. Koch is 5 acres with a residence. This is an eyesore for the scenic highway. Not too good. So I would like to have a few answers on these questions and find out where the 2023 construction control line actually is, because there's been many changes to the construction control line moving west over the last 40 years where I've been working in these counties. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment?
My name is John Steele, and I live directly across the street from the proposed construction site. Everybody's talked about what's on top of the land, but my question is what's under the land, which is the water table. If you put a retention pond in, anything that is in that area, oils from the cars, anything else goes into that retention pond. The water table is very, very high in there. Additionally, when Matanzas Shores built the properties recently behind, a little farther to the north, they changed the water table. Everybody on Old A1A is not on city water. It will be a long time before we go on city water. We all have wells. Concerns is for damage to those wells. When Matanzas Shores went in, we had about 700 parts per million. When Matanzas Shores went in, they changed the water table. We went to 2,500 parts per million. Drinking water that you get in a bottle is about 72, toxic. So not just on top, but we also have to consider what is underneath and what that retention pond will do to the water table right there in that very sensitive area. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to public comment?
I'm Sally Arnold from Sugar Mill Plantation, and some of you may remember me from last year. I concentrate my attention in the southeast quadrant of the county. This is out of what I'm doing, but I'm here tonight because I'm not sure whether you saw this email that I had sent out in November. It was supposed to have been distributed to you, and it is on the tipping point. With the density of this being increased, I'm not questioning what the vested number was. I am opposed to increasing the density because as a county and the municipalities, we need to start thinking differently and approach approvals differently. Because in the past, you could have the high density and there was enough land to absorb the rainwater and the storms. That has passed. We've passed that point. And now we get floods with just regular rain events. And it's going to get worse. As you reduce the amount of land that is available to absorb the water, it's going to continue to get worse. So I strongly am asking that you all start thinking about moving that battleship on how you approach density and approving large developments that are next to one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up and comment? Come right up, please. Your name?
My name is Mark Kowalski. I live in the Willow Woods, directly at the end of across from the proposed development, at the end of the old A1A. And first thing that comes to my mind is the traffic situation, which was mentioned before. We are on that curve, and even now, getting in and out onto the A1A, I can imagine what's going to be with the whole development and that many houses, across the street. It's already a dangerous situation. The other thing that came to my mind, which was already mentioned, is the water situation. The retention pond, what impact is it going to have on the waterbed and the water that is available to us at this time. And the other thing that came to my mind is that nobody seems to take notice of is the quality of life over there. For instance, where all those people are going to shop for groceries. There is only one small Publix that was very good for years, and now we have development on Jungle Hut. We had the Las Casitas. We have another proposal for the next development, and to find a parking spot now at this Publix, it's getting difficult. And those were things that were coming to mind, and not to mention, of course, that was the forces of nature, the hurricanes, the storms that come across that land and completely shut down the A1A number of times. So it's not like one big hurricane and it closes the A1A. It happens with storms. It happens with any stronger wind. The A1As get shut down, and that's it. So how is that going to look? I don't see that spot of the land, as a place, to develop housing development there, for all those reasons that were mentioned here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to make public comment?
You'd see me again, right? Dennis Clark. I live on the Ocean Shore Boulevard in the Hammock. On this development, Scenic A1A Pride has submitted a report, which I hope is self-explanatory. However, I am speaking only for myself and not for the Scenic A1A Pride Committee. What you're doing, I want you to be completely aware of what you're approving in this special exception. It wasn't stated specifically, so what I'm going to tell you is the lot sizes are way different than what's allowed in an RC zone. So even if a density transfer was part of the original special exception, the lots are only 40 by 70 feet, typically. That's 2,800 feet for a lot. It's less than 1/3 of the required 9,000 square feet that's required in an RC zone. The lot width is 40 feet. That's 35 feet short of the 75-foot minimum required. Lot length of 70 feet is 50 feet short of the 120 required on a 75-foot lot. Front setback of 20 feet is 5 feet short. Maximum lot coverage of 60% is 171% over 35% max requirement. So if this is going to set a precedent, I'm really concerned, because what we're going to see is wherever we have a sewer, which is now going to come into the, on A1A, all the way up to Marineland, we're going to see, 16 homes in 3.5 acres. I mean, this is crazy. So just wanted you to know what you're looking at in this special exception, rather. Thank you.
Thank you. We have anyone else?
My name is Mario Stimis. I live right across the street from this development, so I'm very, very familiar with that area. What Mr. Steele didn't mention is that his water well,
Excuse me, sir. Talk to the mic, please.
Yeah, costs close to $10,000, right? So it's important for him to have good water there. Also, I want to second the concerns from the previous speakers about turning into the development. It's absolutely impossible there. So the solution would be, Michael, a turning lane there. That should be a requirement. And I also second the concerns about hurricanes and water. During the last storm, it was Hurricane 1 or tropical storm, difficult to say. So I live on the west side, right? The water came actually very close to my door. The highway was, the highway, A1A was totally flooded. And there's also a component about evacuation plans. So we are talking about adding at least 50 people, right, to evacuation plans that they will need to change. Last but not least, I am also concerned about sewage. Ronnie said that he actually approved this on behalf of Matanzas Shore, the connection last October, which is fine. However, the capacity there is changing very dynamically. Why? Because and by the way, it's not a public, it's private. The plant serves 3 new developments there. So Richmond Home is still building there, KB is still building there, HR is still building there, right? So there's still lots of houses that go in that need to use that capacity. So by the time everyone is done there, the capacity of that treatment plant may change dramatically. So that must be a condition of approval if we get to an approval, which most of the speakers tend to say that we should not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone else? Right up, come on, right up, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Kowalski, and I live with my husband, Mark, in Willow Woods. I just wanted to reinforce for you gentlemen to come and see the piece of land, but you are wanted to make a decision today. It's a very small piece of land, it's always flooded. I don't think anybody can build on it. That was it. Just wanted to make sure that you guys go and look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have anyone else that would like to come up for public comment before we close out? All right, so seeing none, I would like to give this opportunity to the applicant for rebuttal.
Thank you, Chairman. We have our engineer here, Luke, to answer some of the technical questions that were asked. So I'll address some of the non-technical ones. There was a comment about Washington Oaks State Park. Adam, can we put the PowerPoint back up? I'm sorry. So you know where Washington Oaks State Park is, and there's another property in between ours and Washington Oaks State Park. We had approached, right there, just to the south of ours, there's a lot. I think the county can talk about their attempts maybe to purchase that. Years ago, we talked to the county about purchasing ours, and it wasn't available, or they weren't able to do that, and I don't know if it made the list for your environmental lands group, right? No. So, you know, the concept about Washington Oaks wanting to buy it, I'm sure they'd love to buy it, but we've looked at that in the area, 6-8 years ago, and there was no opportunity for the state to buy it. Needless to say, a couple of the other things that we talked about before we get to the technical is the approval. About 2016, we worked with the county and the county attorney's office and the planning department and asked for a vested rights determination. Adam talked about the vested rights determination that says, as a matter of right, we don't need present approval for this project. All we would do is just submit a site plan, and as long as the site plan looks substantially similar, it shall be approved. So there were some comments in here that I wanted to make sure the community understood that this isn't a request to approve a new development on a vacant piece of property. This is what's approved there today. All we're asking to do is, with the community benefit that the county has been asking us to pursue, that we have attained, as you heard from the sewer issue, that we'd like to change it to detached single-family types. And yes, they're smaller lots, and as it is very similar to the one down in Beverly Beach. So that's the plan. So again, just making sure everybody understands that there's an approved plan here right now. The lots, and Dennis's comments about precedent, you always have to be concerned about that, and I know Sean in particular and Al are concerned about precedents, but that's why it's a special exception. The law on special exception says that you can grant things like this, and you can attach conditions to it, and as long as those conditions are met, it would be binding on the developer. Now, could there be another opportunity where somebody comes with a program that they're asking for a special exception and concerned about precedents? Well, that's not really the case, because at any time you can put conditions on there. So this isn't setting a precedent for the county, so you don't have to worry about that, and I think Sean would agree. So with that, I think I've addressed all those non-technical questions, and Luke is going to answer some of the things that were asked, specifics.
Good evening, board members. My name is Luke Kulich. I'm the project manager with Zev Cohen & Associates, 300 Interchange Boulevard, Ormond Beach, Florida. I'd like to start with the traffic concerns. So that everybody knows, we're working with Lassiter Transportation, the owner engaged LTG, to study the site and help with the traffic studies and some of the permitting aspects. As part of their initial study, their recommendation is to provide a left turn lane into the site, just because of the concerns that everybody mentioned here this evening. So there will be a left turn lane into the property around that curvature coming southerly, and then we also envision a right turn taper into the property just to make it more convenient for the residents to enter the property. So that covers the traffic items. In terms of the water concerns, I completely understand the concerns, but I want everyone to understand that any improvements on the site would require stormwater treatment. We're doing the traditional stormwater collection and treatment system. We're removing a drain field from the site based on what's been approved, and to me, that's a huge improvement. Connecting into a collection system and then into the Matanzas treatment plant versus doing a stormwater treatment, I think that's a huge improvement on the site in terms of quality or seepage concerns into the groundwater. In terms of some of the concerns about the homes being flooded, the first floors are going to be garages. They're not going to be livable spaces, so you're going to have at least a 9-foot high garage with frangible walls for flood protection. And we're also going to be working with a coastal construction consultant for the FDEP permitting, which will set minimum finished floor elevations that DEP cites in their studies. They may have upgraded it after the latest storm events. We're going to get into that as we get into final engineering and design. But again, the owner is engaging a coastal construction consultant. We're going to work with them to set the minimum finished floor elevations. And again, the first floors will provide that 9-foot ceiling to the bottom of the first livable floors. Some of the other items, the dune restoration, as Mike mentioned, we're going to work with the county and the coastal construction consultant to restore the dunes out there. Correct. The entire.
Please.
The entire segment in this area. I've been out to the site after the hurricanes. Everyone lost their dunes. I mean, there's definitely a huge damage out there. So we will be providing improvements as part of the site plan approval for whether it's dune restoration or a wall of some sort. That's yet to be determined. Again, we'll be working with the coastal construction consultant on that item. Any other items that I missed? Insurance, we're going to work with FEMA to remove the structures out of the floodplain based on the fill and their elevations of the livable structures. So yes, there will be home insurance if that's what you're alluding to.
Thank you. Direct your questions in the public comments, please. Adam, do you have any closing statements on this? Staff comments?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of comments, and I'm probably not going to hit them in too much order there, but certainly what's been said, and just to echo what Luca just added into the record, and I think the applicant had just said that in his many words, that they're going to construct the dunes, I think is what Mr. Cimento had said, and they're also going to consent to our easement then for restoration for future project, whatever may be needed there if we have that need in the future. Water and sewer is being extended. I think somebody had said that it wasn't real clear. It is. I didn't say public. It's a private system. It's from Matanzas Shores. I think I had said that before. There is a force main that's there in A1A. It's on the west side. It's established. It is not public. It is private, and it is being offered to this development as Mr. Wilson had mentioned in exchange for the developer coming in and rebuilding the dune. And so if you heard that was what was stated in the record, that exchange is happening, and Matanzas Shores does have capacity. I think somebody had said, same speaker had said that there wasn't sufficient capacity. That's actually not for someone who is not an expert to state testimony, then. That's certainly, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but that can't happen. A connection cannot happen if there's no capacity, and we've had extensive discussions about both seasonal and non-seasonal use of the facility, and I believe after those discussions and talking with representatives of the HOA, there is sufficient capacity for this. Doesn't mean it's unlimited. Again, it's a private system. They have existing capacity that's available within their system, and this is what they've determined to be an appropriate use for them with that, effectively the quid pro quo that has the strengthening of the dune, which is of critical concern to them in this area, and I can't blame them. I think there was statement about coastal construction control line. I wanted to make sure I touched that. And so, and I think Mr. Cimento did touch on that also, and Luke may have also mentioned it, was the anything seaward of the coastal construction control line must be permitted through DEP. And so that we have that in the building code. We have that in DEP through their rulemaking through statute. And that CCCL roughly coincides with the VE zone, the zone VE within which below a certain level elevation, you'll have to have either open construction or frangible construction. So without getting into any great detail there, and I think you had that stated for the record, that lower areas would be devoted to storage. You know, that's not for something for us to negotiate here. That's not something for us to really put a lot of effort into talking about, because it's a FEMA requirement. And so if you're within the VE zone, the area below that lowest structural member cannot be used for occupied space. You can use it only for storage. And so that's a FEMA requirement. We're not going to jeopardize our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, which does give people insurance. Even if you build seaward of the coastal construction control line, you can get insurance. You may pay a lot for it, but you can have insurance. That's why it's called the National Flood Insurance Program. It's got insurance in its name. And then if you're on that west side of it, then you don't have the V zone frangible consideration, storage only. But you did have comments, I think, made by the applicant that they're still intending to keep that same setup, that they'll still have storage below, the garage area below. And so if you remember from my flood zone map that I showed you, basically the west side of the property is not within that velocity zone. It's in zone AE. Not unlike, I think one of the speakers had said, maybe referred to it wrongly, Los Lagos, Las Casitas being the area that's closest to old A1A, that area having a fill requirement that's there. And I'll submit for the record that I don't know what was being said there exactly, but all of that area is in compliance with, again, the National Flood Insurance Program. We have to do that. And so there's minimum elevations that are required. Our code requires 1 foot above the base flood elevation. Folks may think that doesn't happen. That's what we require for the minimum living area. Now, you can have your garage below that, but if you do that, then you have to have flood vents. And that's not something that's desirable, but you can do that. The National Flood Insurance Program allows you to do that. Again, as a homeowner, you're probably going to pay for that if you decide to have some portion, your garage only, lower than that 1 foot minimum base flood elevation for your finished floor in your garage. If you have that below, you're probably gonna pay some more in your insurance. Appreciate the comment about the stormwater. I do think Luke was right on that one too, that you're going to have some attenuation. The Water Management District handles that part, and they would require that for this. I also understand and appreciate the comment about the hardscape that's here, and it is part of development, understandably so. And so there's a set aside here. There's an area for stormwater. That I would say quickly, and to the extent I need to talk about it anymore, it's handled through appropriate permitting through the Water Management District for that attenuation. I also appreciate the comment made by the applicant about the traffic study that's underway. Not that was even needed, but anticipated, I think we all did, that DOT as part of their permitting for a driveway on this location. And remember, they have the authority for this. You could talk about whatever you'd like to. DOT is going to be the ultimate decider on what happens with the improvements within its right-of-way and for the driveway connection for this project. So you could say that you want it to be a purple road paved with gold and 50 feet wide. They're going to come up with whatever they're going to come up with, and do think, and I do think everyone from the applicant side is correct on this. Right turn lane into the project, northbound traffic makes sense. That may be a convenient item. That's likely not something DOT would require. The southbound left turn, I think, would be required. We were talking in our sidebar while that discussion was going on. I also think there's probably some better signage that could be provided southbound as far as hidden driveways. We've all seen the signage that's provided. I don't know if it's already there on southbound A1A when you go from 4 lane to 2. I'm surprised it's not already there because you do have a present hidden driveway with Old A1A coming in from its right-hand side, from the west side, into that narrowing that's happening. And I get it. When you're going south on that, if you're pulling out on Old A1A, you're making that right turn. It's maybe not as bad as somebody who's stacking there wanting to make a left turn into this project, but you're still having someone who then is hitting the gas. You have someone then that's coming in from a 4-lane down to a 2-lane that's going every bit of 45 miles per hour. You can still have a very risky situation there. If that sign doesn't exist right now, it ought to be there for the hidden driveway that's present on the property. I think I probably hit all the high points I can think of. Again, not hitting them all, I intended for the record. I do think the conditions that we've talked about, if we want to go back to those and certainly look at those again, I've got them in the staff report. I don't want to go back and read them into the record, but I think that some of the comments that were made really are reflected in the conditions. I think Mr. Moylan wanted to add to something that I said too. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moylan?
Yes, I just wanted to add in response to Mr. Clark's comments. They were very aptly put. You will notice that what we're doing here does not meet the dimensional requirements of RC zoning, but that is because of the posture in which this is before you, having gone through several iterations of a special exception and applying the dimensional standards of a zoning category or standard that no longer exists. And with 19 different conditions attached to the special exception. So when Mr. Mengel first introduced this item, he called it a PUD light. And so we are a PUD light, I guess. What you're doing here is recommending to the county commission a specific zoning based on the character of this development without any reference to the existing standards of a set zoning category in our code. It's created specially for this project. And the question in your mind is this a better project or something that we can say meets the 9 conditions for special exceptions? Is this a better product than what is currently allowed, that larger attached condominium structure with a giant septic tank and no public access?
Thank you. Bringing it back to the board, do we have any comments, any questions for staff? Anyone?
Of course I do. I took notes on everyone's comments, and so I'm going to lump them together. First of all, Mr. Scimento's comment about this property has vested rights. We have to take that on our situation here. We have to take that seriously. What that means is that we don't have the right to say, hey, we don't think you guys should have a development there. You can't build there anymore. This has already been through some lawsuits. It just cost the county a bunch of money, and this is not an option to us to stop a development on this property. So all the comments that had to do with stopping the developments, good, bad, or indifferent, we don't have that option. As Mr. Moylan said, we have more of a choice here. Do we like the townhome, which is up on the screen right now, or do we like the individual homes better? To the HOA who is allowing this to get the water, their concern is very well put, that this particular lot, someone asked about, hey, there's no dune there. Did you realize there's no dune there? Part of the reason why there's no dune there was because way back in the day, when this was a trailer park and a little motel, they tore that up, and it's been gone all these years. Excuse me, please. That's where this thing originally had its destruction. There was natural vegetation on both sides of all this area, but that land got beat up. I used to go there a lot myself back in the day. I've been here for 42 years, and I've been to that lot many, many, many times. Not recently, back when I was much younger. Now, the dune has been washed away. Everyone knows about that since the storms. The county does have some programs going on. Right now, I was actually up in the engineer's office yesterday, and she showed me the layout. And they are bringing sand through FEMA and some other state grants to start renourishing the dune, but that's not enough. Eventually, the best armoring up here is going to be a seawall. and they won't allow you to armor a property that doesn't have homes on it. So if it doesn't have a home on it, if there's nothing built on this property, this land, like all the other ones around there, are more apt to be that opened up area where you'll see the storms and everything come through. And as someone mentioned, as it did in, I think it was Ian, just came right through and flooded water out and brought all kinds of more destruction because of how much destruction has already been done to that original sand dune. So I think, first of all, they have every right to develop. We can't stop them. But a development on there is better than no development just to protect the dune. There's not going to be any protection to this dune. There's going to be just what you see right now. If nothing is ever done here, we're going to see more problems than if it's developed. I'm not as worried about the concern about the flooding of the homes. As they said, the first X amount of feet is automatically dictated how much where you can have habitable floors. I think they're going to have breakaway walls. There's a lot of things, there are a lot of rules in the building codes that's going to mandate the safety and the habitability of the homes. And to someone who's concerned that people buy a pig in a poke, that's up to them. Again, we're not here to try. We don't have that ability. That's not what the county is here for. Is to try to be your moral mentor, whether or not you should buy a piece of property or not. They have the right to develop it. So my concern has more to do with the density question. So they're allowed in this. Because of the density. The density, this extra 2 units, because of the way this was originally set up, that is not violating any of the, going back to any of the lawsuits, or that isn't going backwards on these lawsuits. Is that correct? The density question. We're allowing 2 more units.
Correct. The lawsuit was, there was a stipulated settlement that this project would go back through the approval process, and you couldn't in the court determine what that outcome would be, because this is in itself a quasi-judicial procedure. So the only thing that happened in the court was the parties agreed to settle it outside of the court and go through the special exception process. There was a comment made tonight that there were only 4 homes approved or something.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
It was
but-
14.
Okay.
In fact, the record shows 14. So now they are asking for 2 more units. And so that does open the door for you to impose any conditions or to even deny if you were to see fit. They did open that door. But in terms of it doesn't violate the comp plan or any sort of density requirement.
Okay. We know that the traffic is going to be mandated through DOT, like you said, Adam. Doesn't matter, we're not traffic engineers, and no matter what we tell them to do, DOT is going to tell them this is the safest way to develop or not to develop. And they have every right to have an access on there, so we really can't affect that part of it. I don't know if, again, if we put a condition on DOT says you can't do it, I think we're creating a problem. So I don't think we have the right to do that. So let me ask you one other thing again about the, going back to the density. If they have 16 units now, is there any additional capacity issues that arise that from what we have, let's say, allocated? I know we haven't really tracked that in the past so much, but for the Hammock, will these 2 extra units create any more of a capacity to the overall, like to the road or to the police and whatever? Is that having a bearing on, are those 2 units going to affect a decision to say this is becoming, again, this is on this particular lot, but is this an issue that we have to look at and say, is that density, those 2 units itself, going to create a problem?
No, and the quick answer there, and about what Mr. Moylan didn't mention is, remember, this has a mixed-use, low-intensity land use that's in place with its 3 acres and change. It's over 20 permissible dwelling units that could be there. And if we go back, I think one of the speakers had said the original approval back in 2006, I think, was actually for 29 condo units. I think was what the number that was approved. And so that, we effectively, this planning board made that determination once already, that 29 units were sufficient, that had met concurrency for a multifamily development back in 2006. So a convoluted way to go around and tell you, 16 versus 14 versus 29, it meets concurrency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
Just a comment, that is a scary part of the road with the bend and where it's divided close by. Even now, I'm hopeful that DOT, if they do look at this, might, hopefully some good comes out of it, where not only do they, make a safe driveway in and out of here, but they make it safe up and down that road, whatever modifications they deem necessary. But it's probably good to get their eyes on that area, in my opinion.
You have a comment back there? No? I'd like to say a quick comment, and that's, again, to reiterate what Mr. Michael Schumento had said before, that this is a request for an amendment, for an already approved special exception that's been around for the last 20 years, 17 years, what have you. So we cannot not approve this. And that's about my only comment. If anybody has anything to say no, and or we'll move on and ask for a motion to approve.
I'll just make a comment that I think the single-family homes is a lot better than the townhomes that were originally approved. And we're kind of stuck in a position where we have to do something with it. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve application 3339.
All right, do I have a second on this?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those,
Can I have a discussion?
sure. Can we have a discussion?
Your motion does go along with the, all the conditions staff put in.
Correct.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The motion is approved.
Thank you all.
Do we have any staff comments?
No, sir. Have a good Valentine's Day evening.
So I would have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
meeting adjourned.